Is Emperor Nefarious singing his... That's funny. Alright. Oh god. Okay, now I have to listen to this. I was about to pause the recording here. This should have been in the main game. I would have liked the little musical number.
That's pretty good. Oh, it's wonderful. Look at me and my flawless schemes. The kind you could never dream.
See, I love when they put like this kind of effort into just because this is just the credits, you know. But they didn't have to compose the song, but they went ahead and did it just for the extra charm, you know.
Join me at the top. Why don't you join me where the stars all shine and I.
It sounds like a Disney like villain song. You know what I mean? Like it's like really good. They went so hard for this like little credit song. That's just awesome. And Nefarious. Oh, that's a bar. That's a bar. That's so awesome. Dang. Alright, guys. I'm sure the rest of the credits will play out and I'll probably bring up a prompt for like a new game plus or something. Let me turn down the music a little bit more, actually. So yeah, I'm just trying to gather my thoughts on this game. Again, I'm just gonna go right out the back. Overall, I enjoyed it the whole way through. I enjoyed the entire game. It obviously has its flaws, like every game does, but at the end of the day, I was just smiling. Like every time I played this game, I was just smiling ear to ear. Other than when I was like struggling in Zerky's arena with those 2 challenges, but yeah, I mean, all the characters were charming. Like, this game was just packed to the brim with charm. You know, Insomniac did such a good job with, like, just putting in just the effort, the extra little effort that takes it to that next level. You know what I mean? Just like with the song at the credits. That's just an example. They didn't have to do that, but they did, because they wanted to give their game personality. You know, they wanted to give their game that extra oomph to it, to make it just that much more enjoyable. You know what I mean? And I really do respect devs that put in that effort, you know? Like all the little gold bolt optional things, like the wacky stuff like big head mode or confetti, or trying to remember other ones, but you know, just little things like that just kind of give the game the extra charm and stuff. It's a really fun little package. Really fun little package. I said this a couple times while playing the game, but I do believe that every character that they introduced, I enjoyed. So much so that a lot of them, I wish they were around for longer. You know what I mean? I feel like in past Ratchet games, the new side characters that they introduce felt more present throughout the story. Whereas in this game, I feel like they would introduce a character and they would kind of just show up and do their thing, which was enjoyable, then they kind of wouldn't be there, you know? Really, it was mainly the Morts and the Monks that you really felt their presence throughout the game. But I would have loved to see Captain Quantum more. I would have liked to see more of the Phantom, you know, but they kind of just showed up for their one level and then left. They did come back for the finale, and that kind of takes me to my thoughts on the finale. My biggest negative about the finale was that it was too easy. It was just too easy. It wasn't challenging enough. That's my only negative though. And I was playing on the hardest difficulty, not the hardest difficulty, second to hardest difficulty, and we didn't die a single time. And yes, we had all of our, you know, level 5 weapons and stuff, but still, like, I don't even think I did that cheesy of a strategy throughout the whole thing. Maybe at the ending boss, but it was still, at the end of the day, it was too easy. Like, even the nefarious attack patterns, they weren't super challenging. You know what I mean? I just think I think back to other games. Like, I always go to Ratchet 3's Dr. Nefarious fight was always challenging for me because his attacks were just crazy. You think about Ratchet 1's ending boss fight, like the way the game scaled up to that point, like the Rhino, you could literally not get the Rhino 1 on your first blind playthrough. It was like basically impossible. You had to replay games and save up bullets to purchase the Rhino. The only way you could get the Rhino in Ratchet 1 in your first playthrough is if you do like this glitch with the hoverboard racing, where you could get like infinite bolts or whatever. But yeah, so I'm just kind of bringing it back to how I don't feel like the ending was challenging enough. But with that said, the set piece was amazing, intense, just jumping through dimensions, jumping on floating platforms, having all of our friends that we made throughout the game come back and help us out. You know, like with Pierre and Captain Quantum helping us pilot a ship into the nefarious robot, and then, you know, calling Bubbles at the end to finish him off once and for all. Having the monks open portals for us to jump through and get inside, you know. It was just, it was really great. It was more of like, it was less intense and, oh my gosh, the universes are at stake, and more just like, this is awesome. Just having our friends come together and, you know, it's like when Avengers Endgame, when they all came through the portals, and you had everybody back, you never felt like they were gonna lose. It was just fan service moment. The fan service moment, you're just smiling, like all your friends are winning and beating the bad guys. You know, nothing bad's happening. You know, obviously until the very end, but you know, you just never felt like for a second they were gonna lose once everyone showed up. That's how I felt about this ending. Like, I never felt like Nefarious had one final thing to kind of throw a wrench in the proceedings of the final battle. Like, I just felt like the entire time we were on that last planet, like everyone was just working together flawlessly, and you know, they were making jokes and everyone was smiling, including me. And yeah, so it was a really fun finale. Overall, I enjoyed it. Obviously, I just would have liked it to maybe be a little bit more challenging. And that's kind of my thoughts throughout the entire game. I do feel like, you know, maybe it's just because I'm not a kid, but even like when I would replay the PS2 trilogy or even A Crack in Time, like I feel like overall they were a little bit more challenging than this game. I feel like my biggest issue with the game is that it wasn't challenging enough. You know, it was like represented in the fact that they give you the Map-O-Matic after beating just such an easy side mission. You know what I mean? And I think that's kind of representative of where they've taken the Ratchet series in recent years. It didn't have, it's not as gritty. It's not as, you know, edgy. You know, the Ratchet series has definitely lost its edge and has kind of moved towards more a comedic, Pixar type aesthetic and feel to the games, you know, which is enjoyable in its own right. Like I said, I enjoyed the game, but I do feel like the bread and butter of the Ratchet series has always been those overarching themes of consumerism and the edge. It has that edge to it where, you know, there's a little bit of conflict between characters, and, you know, obviously they had conflict, but it was more, I don't know how to explain it. Like, you really felt like Ratchet and Clank disliked each other in the first game. You know what I mean? You really felt like in Ratchet 3, Quark was really struggling with his identity. You know what I mean? And in this game, like, yes, Rivet and Kit had a little bit of a falling out, but Rivet never really fully expressed like any hatred or dislike for Kit. This is more like disappointment and shock, you know? So my point being, like, overall the story, it did lack a little bit of that edge I like in Ratchet games. Also, the themes weren't really that heavy, you know? It was more of like the Nefariouses didn't have a reason for being evil. They were just evil, and either they wanted to take over the world or dimensions or universes or whatever you want to say. You know, it was just bad guys are bad and good guys are good. So let's have the good guys stop the bad guys. Because like I said, it's just the direction that they've been taking the series. They've kind of been not dumbing it down, but simplifying the story and really focusing more on the feel of the game, you know, and having it just be first and foremost just fun and charming, and you know, that overarching feel of levity to it, where you don't want to take it too seriously. You just play Ratchet and Clank and have fun. That's kind of like what they're going for, you know. Not that the earlier games weren't fun, obviously, but you know, like I said, the earlier games did have it was a bit more you know what I'm trying to say, less kiddie, I guess, more T for teen and less E10 plus or E for everyone. The game really was just good guys are good, bad guys are bad, you know, which you can count as a flaw, but if you really think about it, that's not really, they weren't really going for anything too crazy. Like I said, they were just going for a fun experience, and that's what we got. That's really what we got. It was just fun, it was lighthearted, it was just awesome to play through. Okay, here we go. We got the ending thing. You have unlocked challenge mode. Keep all of your weapons and play through a harder version of the game to get new weapon upgrades. I think what they'll do is they'll make it, instead of level 5 being the cap, they'll have like a level 10. Earn more bolts with the bolt multiplier. Create a new challenge mode playthrough at any time from the title menu. Or, in classic Ratchet and Clank fashion, you can go back in time right before the final fight. But we have literally nothing to do. So, kind of return to Xerxes or continue to the title menu. But I'll go ahead and hold off on this and finish my last thought. I felt like the story really didn't kick off until Ratchet and Rivet met up and Emperor Nefarious came into play. So, and I think that was like pretty much like halfway through the game, or maybe even a little over halfway through the game. Once Emperor Nefarious came into the picture and Ratchet and Rivet met up, or at least like started communicating with each other. You know what I mean? I feel like that's really when the story became more interesting. So I would have liked Emperor Nefarious to come in much, much earlier. I would have liked Ratchet and Rivet to start working together physically, or even just over comms. Just, you know, really having that plan set out like a lot earlier. But what they really wanted to take their time, because they knew that introducing Rivet and Kit, this game depended on the players liking them, you know, and to do that, to make sure that happened, they really took their time with introducing them, and, you know, so, and that I can respect, but I really do feel like they either had to introduce them sooner or they had to make the game longer so we had more time. Basically what I wanted more time with the three main characters that they introduced, i.e. Emperor Nefarious, Rivet, and Kit. Because again, I did really like them, and I would have liked Emperor Nefarious to be fleshed out a little bit more, other than being just like a slightly, I say slightly very loosely, because like he was basically a normal Dr. Nefarious with like a different personality. There wasn't much that set him apart from Dr. Nefarious other than that, you know, because Dr. Nefarious, he's done bad stuff. He's taken over worlds and galaxies, you know what I mean? So he's not much more different than Emperor Nefarious, except Emperor Nefarious was just slightly more serious and slightly more edgy. But I say, again, slightly very loosely, because he was still very much goofy, like just in a different way. He was still goofy though, like Dr. Nefarious. So I would have maybe liked him to be introduced earlier on, have him more present, and, you know, because like Ratchet 3 has always been my favorite Ratchet, because you really felt the back and forth between Dr. Nefarious and Lawrence and Ratchet and Clank and Captain Quark. You know, you really felt the back and forth throughout the entire game, where Nefarious does this and we have to respond. We do this and then he responds. You know what I mean? I don't want to get into a whole Ratchet 3 review, but if you've played the game recently, I feel like you'd agree with me in that sense, where you really felt like that coming together. Whereas I feel like Emperor Nefarious he felt much more distant. He was always off in just doing his own thing, and, you know, if anything, the dimensions were almost like a side villain. Like the crumbling dimensions were almost like a side villain, because oftentimes those are what carried the plot forward, where we had to fix this or fix that, and all we got was like, oh, this is only happening because Emperor Nefarious is messing with the dimensions and stuff again. But basically my point is, I feel like I wish Emperor Nefarious was more present earlier on and throughout the game, because I did really like him. But yeah, I really liked Rivet and Kit, and you know, I would have liked them to be introduced earlier on because of that, and just have them really, you know, really interact with Ratchet and Clank, and you know, really establish that relationship and teamwork. Maybe even have Rivet and Ratchet. I expected Rivet and Ratchet to kind of butt heads a little bit. I would have liked that. Not maybe as intense as Ratchet 1 was, where Ratchet basically just straight up didn't like Clank at all. You know, but just a little bit more conflict, where maybe Ratchet wanted to go about something this way and Rivet wanted to go about something another way. You know, and they had to work through that. But they basically were just like, oh, you're me from another dimension. We're best friends now. You know what I mean? Which is great. And they got along, and I liked that. But I don't know. I feel like it would have been more interesting if, you know, Rivet's personality was a little bit more different, you know, and that led to a little bit more conflict, you know. And I feel like that could have been explored if they made the game a little bit longer, or if they introduced Rivet and Kit earlier on. But yeah, we didn't get that, and that's okay, because again, it was fun seeing them interact with each other at the end of the day. So I mean, I still enjoyed it. Yeah, the last thing, you can't talk about a Ratchet and Clank review without talking about the weapons and the gadgets, right? I'm going to keep this pretty brief, but I did like... well, let's talk about the gadgets first, just because there's not many new ones. So I would have liked a little bit more new gadgets, but really the only new gadgets in this game were the dimensional pooler thing, where you could, like, you know, pull yourself to dimensions. But that was cool, but it kind of lost its novelty pretty quickly, and just became more of like a game mechanic. I was like, okay, this brings me from this place to this place, great. You know what I mean? But it was still a welcome addition, but it felt more of just like stuff that they had you use that for. In past Ratchets, you would have just used a swing shot. You know, I feel like it was more or less just a fancy swing shot, but it was still really cool, just that the whole effect, and it did feel a little bit different in that sense. But my point being, it wasn't really that impactful of an addition to the series, in my opinion. And then the only other thing I can think of is Glitch. And Glitch is fun, and it's a staple of those old PS2 platforming games. You know, your Slies, your Ratchets, your Jacks, where they do have that break in gameplay where you do like a fun little mini game throughout. Like, you think Bentley's hacking in the Slice series, or in Jack 3, you know, you had those like alien technology mini games where the shapes, the buttons would come in on the sides, and you had to like press the buttons at the right time. So for Ratchet, for this one, it had the glitch stuff. So and modern video games have ditched that, because, you know, a lot of story or narrative driven games nowadays, they really try to not distract from the main gameplay too much. You know, those breaks in gameplay. Like, you think of the Spider-Man PS4, another Insomniac game, where the biggest criticism that a lot of people had of Spider-Man PS4 was the Mary Jane sections. Because just like, you're playing like a freaking superhero as Spider-Man with high octane gameplay, web slinging gameplay, but then they make you stop that and have to, you know, sneak around as Mary Jane. You know, so a lot of games try not to do that. But Rift Apart did have those little glitch things, but a lot of them were very optional. You know, you didn't have to do them for the main story, and they were still fun to play through, and they didn't overstay their welcome. They weren't so challenging either. That's an area where I'm okay with it not being as challenging, because it's not a main story thing, and it is distracting from the main Ratchet and Rivet gameplay. So if that was more challenging and I had to spend a lot of time on the glitch stuff, that would have been a negative. But for me, I liked Glitch because, one, she was cute, she was charming, just like the whole game is, right? So it fit in that sense. It wasn't like weirdly dark or weirdly edgy, you know what I mean? Which would have just made it stand out. But again, it was cute and charming, and it wasn't challenging, and it was fun, so I enjoyed that. So gadgets-wise, the Rift Pool thing, it was all right. And the Glitch thing, it was fine too. It was fine. Weapons-wise, there's too many to talk about, but they were fun. A lot of them are really good, really useful. Like, that's what I look in Ratchet weapons. Are they fun to use, and are they useful? Some weapons are fun to use, but they're not very useful. Some are useful, but it's just like, it's either cheesy or they're not very interesting to use. You know what I mean? But I feel like overall they had a good balance of of weapons. Some of them were pretty bottom tier. The Ricochet gets my prize for the worst weapon in the game. It's not very useful. It's not very strong. And when you try to use it, it's like you're open to getting hit a lot. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I can't really think of any specific situations where the Ricochet is very useful. So, worst weapon in the game goes to that. Best weapon in the game, other than the Rhino, obviously, is for me, is the Black Hole Storm. I knew it was going to be one of the best guns just from looking at it. I didn't even need to know what it did. Just from the name and the design of it alone, I knew it was going to be crazy good. And as soon as I got it, I knew it was amazing. Like, the cooldown wasn't terrible on it. Like, I rarely overheated while using it, even before I had it fully upgraded. It was powerful. It was good up close and medium ranges, and even at longer ranges, you could just spray it and it would still hit and do damage. So, yeah, best weapon in the game for me goes to the Black Hole Storm. And the progression was great. I didn't think it was too easy or too challenging to get to level 5. Like, I had to grind out Xerxes a lot to get a lot of those weapons to where I got them. If I didn't do that, I would only have a handful of level 5s going into the last level, which is kind of par for the course for most Ratchet games. Like, if you don't grind out a battle arena and you just kind of just play through and do some of the challenges and then move on to the next planets, you go into the game having maybe, you know, a handful of level 5 weapons that you can depend on, and then your other weapons, you know, are where they are. So I feel like that kind of contributes to the balance as well. But I do feel like the progression in this was solid. You know, upgrading I don't feel like Raritanium was too plentiful. It leaned a little bit more towards the plentiful side, but there was just so many upgrades and so many things you could do for all the different weapons. So overall, I think the weapons and gadgets were solid. The weapons, I was impressed more with the gadgets, but at the end of the day, it was good, and they did enhance the gameplay. I didn't feel like they made it worse at all. But yeah, I guess that's it. I mean, quick summary. Overall, it was a fun and charming game. Would have liked it to be a little bit more challenging, maybe a little bit more fleshed out, a little bit just slightly more edgy. I would have liked the main characters they introduced being introduced earlier on, or make the game a little bit longer. But overall, it was still fun. I had loads of fun playing through it. The graphics were great. The gameplay was great. The weapons I really enjoyed, except for maybe a few. But at the end of the day, it was a really fun Ratchet and Clank package. Where would I rank it in the overall series? Probably mid-tier overall. Gameplay-wise, it's near the top, very much near the top. I do think maybe Ratchet 3 and Crack in Time take the cake for me for my favorite Ratchets gameplay-wise. This is probably top 3 or top 5 Ratchet games in terms of gameplay. And story-wise, I would say it's pretty... honestly, I would say story-wise, it's bottom tier. Just because there's not much story. Again, like I said, it's good guys are good guys and bad guys are bad guys. It didn't have even anything little to kind of take it to the next part. You know, like we've seen it before. You know, planets are getting taken over, being shot up by aliens. We show up and shoot up the aliens, and that's it. And you move on to the next planet. I don't mean to dumb it down that much, but there really wasn't. It was like, let's hunt for the Dimensionator. Let's fix the Dimensionator, or hunt Dimensionator parts so we could stop the bad guys from using it. That was it. That's really it when you think about it. So story-wise, it's pretty bottom tier. But the fact that I liked the characters so much, and I thought the gameplay was great and graphics were great, it kind of brings it up to, I would say, maybe like an average Arif. So for me, Rift Apart was, I don't want to say average just because it makes it sound bad. But like, average isn't bad. You know what I mean? Maybe like slightly above average is what I would say, which is good. Like, I would give it like a 7 out of 10. You know, it was a solid Ratchet game, and there's definitely Ratchets I like more, and there's definitely Ratchets I like less than it. So, but I think, given the context of the series, it needed Rift Apart to be as good as it was. It needed it to be solid. It's a solid, nothing crazy. It didn't do anything crazy with the formula. It didn't do anything crazy. It was just, it gave longtime fans a Ratchet game that just felt like a Ratchet game, you know? And it gave newcomers a fun game that they could play and experience what the PS5 has to offer, you know? So, yeah, I mean, that's a solid review, right? I feel like I've said everything I could about it. I presented the negatives. I presented the positives. Overall, it was a great game, and I do highly recommend it, especially if you're a Ratchet and Clank fan, because you'll be swept up in just the charm of it and just feel really nostalgic. If you're a longtime Ratchet fan, you'll really enjoy this game. And like I said, if you're a newcomer, it's still a very enjoyable game. It's nothing too crazy or too intense. You know, if you're just wanting a fun PS5 game and you've never played Ratchet before, this is still a great game to pick up and play. So I hope you guys enjoyed my playthrough of this. I'm sure you could tell just how much I was enjoying this. Again, I really enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed watching me play through it as well. I really am thankful for you guys stopping by. I love playing games for you guys, and just even though my channel's small, like I say every time, I just enjoy, you know, playing for you guys that stop by or swing by, even for a little bit. It's just fun. It makes me enjoy the games I play that much more. So yeah, that's all I got to say. I loved Ripped Apart, and I can't wait to see what's up next for my channel. I hope to see you all there. Peace.